In the early 19th century, it was very difficult for women to make names of themselves as writers and as authors because it was such a male-dominated industry in the early 1800s. So today I would really like to discuss and to inform about one particular author by the name of Charlotte Bronte. Um, you may have heard of her. She's a very pronounced and proclaimed author in British literature around the Victorian era. She had such a very accomplished life, and she had a great impact on not only literature but society as well. She had so many great poems and novels. So today would really like to admire her works and her life as a whole. Charlotte Bronte is probably one of my favorite authors of all time because of her book Jane Eyre. My goal is to give an overview of Bronte's life and also her works, her poems and her novels, but I also would like to give her credit for the impact that she made on literature as a whole and also society and time. I mean, she just really had this great impact that, is applicable to any part in our lives, I guess you could say. So without further ado, I'd like to jump into her backstory and her life's journey. She was born almost 205 years ago to date. She was born on April 21st of 1816, which is only about like a week away from her 205th birthday. So I think it's just pretty cool how that worked out. But she only lived to the young age of 38, which she had a very short life, but she also got so much accomplished in this time. She was the third of six children. Her siblings were Maria, Elizabeth, Patrick, Emily, and Anne, with Maria being the eldest and Anne being the youngest. She was one of the three sisters who, her and two of her other sisters were all authors. So Charlotte, Emily, and Anne were all very popular novelists at this time. Also, her two sisters made an impact as well, with Emily Bronte writing Wuthering Heights and Anne Bronte writing The Tenant of Wildfield Hall. Both of those are also, very popular novels that have also made an impact on life, or not life, I'm sorry, literature. And Charlotte and her two sisters were always, they always were grouped together. The Bronte sisters is what everybody always called them because, they all were so successful as writers. With Charlotte being the eldest of the sister authors, she was also the most educated. She had an opportunity before her writing career to be able to be like a teacher to the other two sisters, according to an article I read by Corey Beth Brown. She was a very independent part of her family. She was probably the most independent person in her family, as a matter of fact. She was schooled very well, and because she was schooled so well, she was able to utilize all that knowledge that she had gotten into her works, and it just set her up for success in a way as a writer and an author. She never really knew her mother, but her father was also a poet. So she didn't just, so happen to have just this poetic gene. No, her dad really engraved that into her minds and her sister's minds, as a matter of fact. But with her father being a poet, and like I said, she didn't know her mother because she died when Charlotte was at a very young age. But that all just all those situations that happened in her life helped her carve a very unique path for her writing. Like I said, she lived to be only 38 years old, and according to an article I read, with the website name called AnneBronte.org, she died of pregnancy complications, which was very a popular way to die at this time, unfortunately. But within her short life, she accomplished so many works of poetry and novels that made such an everlasting impact. She started at a very young age writing poems, and the occasional short story, but she really mainly worked on her poetry, and she defined herself as a poet at the young age of 14 with her poem The Violet, according to the Poetry Foundation article that I read. However, her poems were not the most popular of her works, but she allowed them to be like a transition to her greater works, like her novels, that really made her start to boom. And probably the most famous of all of her novels would be Jane Eyre. Like I mentioned before, it's just a really great poetic masterpiece. It's a romance novel. She published in 1848. But she also wrote many other novels. Not many, she wrote a few other novels. One of them, by the name of Shirley, she published only a year after Jane Eyre, which just shows you how she was very quick with her writing. And it's a really unique habit, I guess you could say, to have as an author. But all of her works were great models for the Victorian era when it comes to romance novels, and just because they had such a poetic feature to all of them, that was just very unique to her style. But also, not only did they just have like this cool poetic masterpiece, but it was also just a very impactful. She just had an impactful way of writing. The way that she had this poetic masterpiece to her, like I said, it kind of created this form for the way that British literature was to develop into. It became more popular, more and more popular as time was going on. Her works, like Jane Eyre, like I said, it was published in 1848, but just year after year, just was getting more and more popular, even after she died. But I mean, not only did she have an impact on literature, but she also had an impact on society as well, encouraging young women to step out of their shell, despite the male domination of that industry. She was like, just go, be yourself, be that person that sticks out. And to many young female authors, she's just a very influential person in that area. So despite the fact that she didn't have the greatest or most well-known family, she created this to be like a backstory for in a position to start writing, and because of her writings, she just became more and more successful and created that impact that, like I said, she has on right now. And with her backstory, her novels, and the impact, I just think overall she's a great author. She had impact on me, and I know she had it on many young women and authors as well. So I think we can follow her influence and just learn from her, and just to know that we have a voice and that we can be in